Well, hello and welcome to our winter warmer on this Friday morning. Now, last Sunday evening, I did a session on communion with Christ, experiential Christianity, and tried to build a theology of the Spirit in the life of the believer. And today, I just want to continue on that and try and tease something out that perhaps I didn't make clear enough on Sunday evening. Hindsight is always 2020. Listen to John chapter 14. This is the farewell discourse. So Jesus is preparing his disciples for his departure, and he's teaching them about what life will be like when he ascends to heaven and post-Pentecost when the Spirit comes down. So listen to John chapter 14, and I'll begin at verse 25. All this I've spoken to you while still with you. But the Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will remind you of everything I have said to you. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. You heard me say, I'm going away and I'm coming back to you. If you loved me, you'd be glad that I'm going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. I've told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you will believe. I will not say much more to you, for the prince of this world is coming. He has no hold over me, but he comes so that the world may learn that I love the Father and do exactly what my Father has commanded me. Come now, let us leave. The disciples were scared stiff of losing Jesus. You can imagine. But Jesus is telling them that he's doing the will of the Father, that the Father has everything in hand, and that it's good for them that he goes because the Holy Spirit will come. And did you notice the work of the Holy Spirit? The Holy Spirit will teach you everything and remind you of everything that I have done. Now, on Sunday, I encouraged you to look at a few books when it comes to the work of the Spirit in the life of the believer, because the gift of the Holy Spirit is hugely important. Let me just maybe remind you of them. There's a tiny little book by Stuart Olliott called Be Filled with the Spirit. If you've ever wondered what that means, then this is the book for you, Be Filled with the Spirit, a great little book by Stuart Olliott. Then there's the Bookends of the Christian Life, the Bookends of the Christian Life by Jerry Bridges. Remember, that talks about the need to understand justification by faith and the need to understand the empowerment of the Holy Spirit. Then there was these little 3 books by Dr. Errol Davis, and particularly book 3, Experiencing God, a great basic and heartwarming introduction to communion with Christ. But a book that is slightly from a different camp, but really helpful, is this, More by Simon Ponsonby. More by Simon Ponsonby. And that's a bigger book looking at the theology of experiencing God through the work of the Holy Spirit. But having said all of that, I actually want to say, if you want to experience more of the work of the Spirit, the key is not to think so much about the Spirit. Now, that sounds a bit counterintuitive. What do I mean? Well, the role of the Spirit primarily in coming to the world is to point us to Christ. The Holy Spirit loves to show us Jesus so that we can be drawn to the Father. That's what the Spirit loves to do. I often say that if you want to know if the Spirit is at work, listen out for the name Jesus. That's how you know the Spirit is genuinely at work, because people are talking about Jesus. What an amazing person God, the Holy Spirit, is. He points us to Jesus. And so actually, if you want to grow in the work of the Spirit, in the life of the Spirit, in the gifts and in the fruit of the Spirit, then actually the key is to follow what the Spirit wants you to do, which is to read the sword of the Spirit, the Word, which is to pray, which is to love one another, to be in life of community. That's what we saw from Ephesians 4 and 5, but as well to look at Jesus. So let me commend to you 2 books that really are, I think, what a Spirit-led and Spirit-filled Christian would want to read. And they would be books about Jesus. And that is where you will know a felt Christ, is when you see Jesus. 2 books, maybe for those of you who want to read something a little bit bigger. The first one is called Knowing Christ by Mark Jones. Knowing Christ by Mark Jones. This is a book of 27 short chapters, but dense, 27 short but dense chapters that introduce us to Christ, talk about Christ's incarnation, Christ's humanity, Christ's emotions, Christ's reading, Christ's temptations, Christ's death, Christ's intercessions for us now, Christ's face. This is a feast of a book. You could kind of sit down and read a chapter at a time, and it will stretch you. And what it does is it makes you realise that there is so much more about Jesus than you realise. And when you read this book, it will make your heart sing, because the Holy Spirit will be going, yes, 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 that is it. This is Jesus. See him there. A wonderful book for those of you who like to think deeply and like to think through who Christ is in all his wondrous glory. And another book I would really encourage you to read is a book that was my favourite book of 2020, along with a number of other people, I think. And it's this, Gentle and Lonely by Dane Ortland, The Heart of Christ for Sinners and Sufferers. This is a beautiful hardback, and it is magnificent. This is a book that I will read and reread and reread again, because it shows me, and it will show you, that it's when you're at your weakest and your lowliest that Jesus is most gentle. And this book presents Christ in his biblical revelation in such a way that when you're reading it, you can't help but feel Christ. Because through your mind, as you study the word through this book, the Spirit testifies to your spirit that you are a child of God, that Jesus died for you, that he loved you. I love this book. It really is so wonderful. If I had enough money and I knew you'd read it, I'd buy you a copy. But this is amazing. It talks about the beauty of the heart of Christ and the tender friend. I mean, have a listen to this. I hope you don't mind me going on about this book. In chapter 13, Why the Spirit, says this: it's one thing as a child to be told your father loves you. You believe him. You take him at his word. But it's another thing, unutterably more real, to be swept up in his embrace, to feel the warmth, to hear his beating heart within his chest, to instantly know the protective grip of his arms. It's one thing to hear he loves you. It's another thing to feel his love. This is the glorious work of the Spirit. This is exactly what I'm trying to teach you, brothers and sisters. This is exactly what I want for you. The felt Christ through his Spirit as you look to him. So there we are, some more thoughts on the work of the Spirit in the life of the believer. I trust you will know him more.